Welcome back, friends, for another episode of The Players Are Loud. Tonight, I say tonight, I'm recording this tonight at nighttime. We've got the amazing Chris Carver with us. Chris, what's up? Welcome.
What's going on, man?
Chris is, Chris, you're to me like a mad scientist, dude, in a good way. Chris is an amazing composer in his own right. He's a keyboard player. I've heard the guy shred on guitar, bass. Another one of these annoying folks that seems to be able to do everything well.
Like
you. And he also runs a successful business outside of his music endeavors, just, to make it even more impressive. But yeah, Chris played on a couple tunes on The World Is Loud. You played on Truth Seeker, well, both versions of Truth Seeker. The one on The World Is Loud is kind of like the reinvention, and we had the original version of that was a project. We got to fly to Baton Rouge, go to PreSonus and record at their studios there, which was really, really cool. But
so awesome.
But and you're also on The Professor, which we just released a video for earlier this week. And man, we've been a part of each other's musical lives ever since we met now. So I mean,
talk about 10 years or so now.
Yeah, it's crazy how fast time has gone by.
Yeah.
Our first time working together was it was you hiring me, right? I mean, we talked a little bit about this with Jason, because Jason Palmer, of course, another amazing drummer. Both Chris and Jason, by the way, are from Tupelo. Had no idea that the incredible talent that was in Tupelo, Mississippi. I hadn't been there before until I got to record with Chris. And man, tell everybody about how we got connected and all that good stuff.
So yeah, I'm probably one of just a couple of guys that you're doing these interviews with. It's not a full-time, professional musician. So it's very much a hobby for me. I did that in my youth, kind of pursued that. But I know I've told you all this before, but I was a fan of yours in college. So I've known about Adam Nitti for many years before we had met. So at the time, what was it, maybe like 2010 or so, I guess, 2011?
Yeah,
maybe?
I mean, would have had to be, right.
Somewhere around in there.
Around then. Mm-hmm.
So at that time, I was playing in a band with Jason and a couple other local guys, David Duncan, who's a tremendous guitar player from the area. And so we were playing in a fusion band. And, we were just kind of playing at it. We all had day jobs, and it was just kind of a little fun hobby. And, David owns a really beautiful studio called The Lodge. And we just said, well, hey, let's record a few of these tunes and, maybe put an album out, at some point. And right around that time, we kind of started writing some tunes and getting things going. Our bass player got a gig in Vegas. So we lost him. His name's Nate Holloman. He's from Memphis. He's a fantastic, super good guy and a ridiculous bass player.
He is.
Yeah. So he had big shoes to fill. So, I was just kind of thinking, well, I've been a fan of this Adam Nitti guy for, so long. I feel like he lives in Nashville. That's probably pretty close. Maybe we could get him down here for a weekend and knock these tunes out. And I just kind of called you out of the blue. I think I emailed you, and you were on the road. And within like an hour or two, you emailed me back. And you're like, yeah, man, let's set something up and record. And the rest is history. And that session, that was like a 2-day session, I think.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That session, that wound up being, we used a lot of those tracks on my first album.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the name of your first album?
We had a great time. Ghost in the Machine.
Yeah, Ghost in the Machine. And this
you're
this
all
album,
over that album.
That album is incredible. And
thanks,
we
man.
also had, that was the first time, well, I speak for myself, maybe not for you, but that was my first time working with Brent Mason, because you also hired Brent, right? Because we were
I think that was my second time working with Brent.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I think that might have been my second time. I really didn't know him that well at the time. And, I think if it wasn't the first time we had met, it was the second. I know we had done a live show in Tupelo with Brent, with David and the rest of the guys. So that was either the first or second time I had met him as well. Yeah. And he's living legend.
Man, so many fond memories. And the thing that was so great about those sessions is, at that time I was doing a lot of traveling, and as a result of touring was my main source of income. And as a result of that, it basically rendered my session status as temporarily on hold, because you can't do in-town sessions, or heck, for that matter, out-of-town sessions on someone else's schedule that's going to conflict with your tour schedule at all. So I was kind of forced to be removed from that, and getting to go to Tupelo and do these sessions with you all was, I don't know if you realize how much of a big deal that was for me at the time, because it was just so nice to be able to, we just kind of planted ourselves at the studio. I was out of town. You didn't have the distractions of home or anything. And it's this gorgeous studio that David built. And we really had truly like interactive sessions, just like old school, it was
great. It was one of my favorite sessions I've ever been on.
Me too.
It was such a good
Absolutely.
Time. That makes me feel good. I'm gonna shoot this to David too. I know that's gonna make him feel nice.
Yeah, man.
That was his vision for that studio. Was, when we took you out there, I know you were probably thinking we were crazy, because it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, it's 30-minute drive from any civilization. So you are unplugged when you're out there and you're in the moment. And I think that's kind of the way he wanted it. And it's one of the best studios I've ever been in. But yeah, that session was so much fun, and all of us just kind of clicked. First day we were kind of,
absolutely,
busting each other's chops, and just having a good time from day one. So that was cool, man. It laid the groundwork for a lot of good friendships there.
Well, and you took the words right out of my mouth. I mean, I almost feel like the friendships had already kindled even before we got significant progress done on the record. Like you said, it really felt like a group of people that everybody was just like-minded, man. We all really just wanted to make the best music we could. Everybody was so humble and just a pleasure to work with, man. It was just, I forever speak fondly of those days. It's great.
Yeah, man, we had some good times there. And like I said, I think the tracks that we produced out of that, most of them, that album that we were initially going to do never really materialized. And those tracks, I'm so glad we got to use them on something. And
me too.
They're fantastic tracks.
So whatever happened to the other tracks then? Were they just sort of put on hiatus? I don't even remember.
I think so. I had written most of the tunes, I think. And I think David had a couple that he was working on. So we were going to start with the ones that we had already, we had been playing those tunes in clubs for, probably a year or so. So we kind of already had them under our hands. So we were like, well, let's just go in and cut these, it'll be nice and easy. And that's kind of where we started. And then it just kind of never materialized after that. But yeah, I took those tracks, and David was cool to let me use them. So
yeah, man, so cool. So that was the beginning of the first album, Ghost in the Machine.
Mm-hmm.
And tell us about how your second album came together, because that was one that was a record that started as your album project, right? I mean, that was just a complete evolution of, you had a vision.
Started that in a spare bedroom.
Yeah.
That was it. Just started right there and just went from there. And it took a long time. That second one took about 3 years to complete.
Yeah.
I think you and I are a little similar in the fact that I'm not going to rush to put something out.
Yeah.
Unless I'm ready to say something, or unless I feel like I can do a better job than what I did before.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. That was kind of where I was. I was like, well, that first album's really cool, and I did some cool things on it, but I wanted to do something a little more mature and focus a little bit more on composition. And so I really took my time with that one and really wrote things slowly, and I got a lot more people involved to help me with it. And I'm really proud of that album. That one was a big time labor of love, and I can kind of hear a little bit of that in, by the way, this, which I just got in the mail yesterday.
Right.
You can hear it in those albums that, right? You can hear those albums that someone really poured over and really spent hours and hours and fine tuning. You hear that in an album, and I hear that in your recent album. I hear that in all of them, really. But I guess since we've been talking through your entire process of making this, I really hear those hours in it. So
I appreciate you.
Really good album, man. It's really good.
Thank you. It definitely that's number 6 for me, and it is absolutely, without question, my most ambitious effort, because of how I got myself into trouble with that record, turning it into something that I didn't know it was going to be. It really did. That vision for the record really did change. And as would be expected, 99% instrumental, records prior to this. A lot of people who are familiar with the other stuff, I mean, they're taken by surprise.
How is that being received?
I'm grateful.
What's your feedback right now?
Yeah, I mean, people who are, there may be more people out there who don't like it, who just following the rule. Better to say nothing at all than to say something negative. But I
think it's a really strong transition. Personally, I mean, yeah. I hear your background in this music. Yeah. Obviously, it's not a fusion jazz tune. It's prog rock, which I know both of us are huge fans of, and sure. I think a lot of fusion players kind of have a bit of prog in their background. I think that
it seems like if you're going to cross over into something that is
there's some overlap there.
Yeah, that's like a less that's a less bumpy transition than some other genre switches could be. Were you? And I've been asking so many people this. I mean, when you started getting these tracks for me, I mean, were you like, what's he doing? Like, were you as surprised?
Well, you had kind of set me up for it a little bit. You had kind of set me up before I ever heard any of the tracks. You would kind of let me know that things were kind of going in a little bit of a different direction. And whenever I get a track from you, I get excited because I know it's going to be something that I'm going to dig because I think we have a similar taste in music. But this one was a fun one. The Professor was a really good one. That one's kind of the one that I've been listening to the most here lately.
Yeah.
That one, it instantly sounded like Rush to me. So I love that, it was a Neil Peart tribute type. I didn't know that at the time when I was recording it.
Influence was there for sure. So
yeah. But it sounded just like a Rush album. So on that one, I just kind of, I pictured Geddy with a Moog Taurus pedal. So I would, put some pads in there, and I think we did a B3 track and an EP track, and did a little bit of those little rhythmic tracks.
You had some, Chris here is, for those who aren't familiar with you yet, you are not only a gifted virtuosic player, but you are also one of my favorite things about who you are as a player. It's something about how you perceive tones and how you create tones and sounds. It's just, man, it's phenomenal. And I don't know what you ended up using there was like this one sort of ethereal patch that you were using on the Professor.
Yeah.
I don't know what that is. That was it took the song to a whole nother level. It's just a subtle little part. It's crazy.
That's one of I appreciate that, man. That's kind of what I think is the hallmark of a good like backing track, is something that you really don't pay attention to, but if it wasn't there, you might miss, you would miss it. I call those little movement tracks, little things that are syncopated here and there and maybe delayed and tempo synced, and those, and just kind of in the right places, it really brings things up. I appreciate that, man. My favorite example of that is on Cosmic Underground. If you listen to that backing track,
man,
all the little things that are going on that if they weren't there, or if you didn't really pay attention to them, you wouldn't notice them. But if they weren't there, I feel like you would miss a little bit of that groove. But
I keep telling people, it's y'all's parts that make these songs look good. I mean, it's
the ridiculous writing. That starts with that.
I don't know about that, but Cosmic Underground, boy, that's become one of the most as far as like my YouTube channel goes, like that is by far like one of the most played songs. Something about that tune and where it sits in terms of maybe people's affinity for different genres. It seems like it struck a chord, pardon the
great tune,
the unintentional pun, but I think it struck a chord with a lot of different generations of people, because I've seen there's been people that like I'll get tagged sometimes in some of these Instagram posts or Facebook posts, and I'm so thrilled because there's a bunch of people that are like covering some of these songs out there, and either playing them with the background track or playing them with their band. I know I've sent you some of these things. I mean,
I know you've seen the kids that are doing your stuff. Man, it's insane.
It is insane.
And your music is difficult. I mean, for those listening, Adam Nitti's music is difficult. It is not easy to play. So it's a huge feat to see that.
to see these people, these players, and the young players, like you mentioned, like you can tell like they've really honed in on a lot of the specifics of what you were doing on the tune, or Jason, you know, what he was playing, Scott's guitar solo, and I'm you know, specifically referring to Cosmic Underground right now, but yeah, man, what a tremendous, you know, swell of pride that must give you all, like, because I know it does for me. It's so cool just to think that someone wants to try to play your music, you know. It's really cool.
But I guess we kind of got off track there, but back to your question. I love getting tracks from you, because I feel like we kind of share a same vision or sonic, you know, things hit our ears similarly. I kind of feel like, so, you know, I like that you just kind of send it to me and say, hey man, just do what you do. And, you know, usually within a couple of drafts, we've got it dialed in. So I'm happy with that. You know, usually it's a pretty straightforward, painless process to record your stuff, other than just learning the ridiculously difficult music.
Well, man, it's an honor to have you a part of all these tunes, and it's fantastic. And I'm honored to be a part of your music as well. And I encourage everybody to please, you know, check out these Chris Carver albums. They're second to none. Just incredible compositions.
Oh, thanks,
I want to point out too, with your last record, Wonderland. I don't think we mentioned the name of it yet, did we? Yeah. So Wonderland is his second album. One of the things that makes that record really unique, and one of the things that I think is just amazing, is you've got these horn section parts on there. Tell us a little about that, because that's something that I know.
Well, I had very little to do with that. Yeah, I mean, I had a vision. I was listening to a lot of Snarky Puppy at the time, which is, you know, one of my favorite bands, and I love how they have the big, you know, orchestras and the strings and the horns, and I've always kind of gravitated towards, you know, large ensembles. So I knew like the next album I wanted to have it really thick and full, and just, you know, a lot of action on it. So I can't remember how I got hooked up with them, but I think maybe it was Jason Palmer that hooked me up with Phil Blassiter, who did all the horn arrangements. I had very little to do with that horn stuff. That's all Phil. He is the man. So, you know, I gave him a couple of ideas or a couple little hooks and things to do, and he built it around the track. So I wish I could take credit for those arrangements, but that's all Phil Lassiter. He's the man.
Well, it's such a beautiful compliment to the tunes, and obviously he must have been inspired by what he was hearing to put that stuff together, because it's just.
I hope so. Yeah,
it's incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, man. You another great thing about your long list of talents here, it's something that we both share in common, is we've been mixing our own records.
I really want to ask you some questions about that. So let's get into it.
I want to ask you some questions about that. Okay. I'm curious, like, for me, I think I enjoy mixing. Sometimes I'm not sure, but I'm unlike somebody who does that every day, you know, for a living. I take a lot of time, you know, and it's just, especially when it's your project, you know, sometimes you can take too much time and second guess yourself and all that other stuff. But that's like one of the greatest challenges for me, is like knowing when it's done, kind of thing. Do you ever?
That's the thing.
You ever struggle with that? Because
I was thinking about this the other day. I think in the next project I do, I'm not going to mix and master it. I think I'm just going to let somebody do it and give it to me, and then we can go from there. But because I'm the same way. I mean, you know, that last album I did, you know, I said 3 years. The songs were done well before that. You know, they were recorded. A lot of that is just the mixing and mastering, and I'm a rank amateur at both. Thank God for, you know, presets and, you know, things like that.
Well, it's so true, but let's be realistic. I mean, you know, these new tools that exist, these software-based tools and plugins, presets. I mean, you and I nerd out on that stuff. I know we've talked about it a million times, sharing, you know, plugins with each other. It's like, I want to say this diplomatically. It's like you've got these incredible tools that seem to, they can help speed up the process. But at the end of the day, I think most people would agree. It's like, if you don't really have the ears to sort of interpret what's going on and make dynamic changes and react to things, the tool doesn't help you if you still don't know how to build something, right? Would you?
Yeah, you get more knobs and faders in front of you. A lot of times you're going to hit a point of diminishing returns if the ear's not there, and if you don't have a vision for what you're wanting to hear. I guess you can really go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, but your mixes are they're great, and
oh, thanks.
Oh man, no, really, I'm not just saying that. I mean, you do a really great job of keeping. And this is one of the greatest challenges for me, but you had to do this too on your stuff because you're using a lot of different musicians on different things. You still want the mastered result, the whole compilation to still be cohesive, from song to song. It doesn't mean they have to sound exactly the same.
That's tricky.
But man, it's tough. And I had on The World Is Loud, I had 6 different drummers. And
wow.
It's like
and the drummer sets the tone. The drummer is really what sets that bass line, I think.
Exactly. So yeah, that to me is like, I kind of look at the drums as the most important part of the mix. It's the most foundational element of the mix. I said the other day on another interview, I feel like you can almost get away with compromised recording processes on the other instruments, but if the drum tracks are super solid and super resolute and good sounding, you can still make the recording sound great. Whereas vice versa, I don't see as being as possible. You could have really pristine sounding guitars and stuff and bass and voice, but if the drums sound horrible, I feel like you can't redeem the recording. That's just my personal opinion.
I agree. And I think that's, luckily we know a lot of the same drummers, and I thank you for hooking me up with a lot of the guys that have played on my stuff. But, that's where it comes down to, is finding a drummer that can get you that polished tone, right to the track.
Right.
Jason can do it.
Yep.
I know on my album, Marcus Finney was on it. And
Marcus,
Dorico,
a bunch of my stuff too. Yeah.
Dorico Watson he always nails it. So, and that's just a couple of names off the top of my head, but that's the thing. And, these home studios are getting so good that you can get those polished tracks,
right.
Remotely. And I think if you start with that, the job is a lot easier.
Yeah.
So that, and I think the bass is probably, definitely number 2 on that list, if not tied for number 1.
Bass is trickier than I think some people realize because of its potential to impede other frequencies or step on the toes of other instruments. And man, I'll tell a really quick story just about my education with that. I've been playing bass for many years already, but still was struggling with getting what I felt like was, bass tracks that really maintained their own character and presence, especially when I played on other people's music. And at the time, up to then, well, in recent years, up to that point where I finally was starting to learn what was going on, I was using a lot of active bass guitars. And the thing about an active bass, traditionally, now there's always going to be exceptions, of course, but like when you're just sort of generally speaking about an active bass guitar and how most of them are set up, they're active because they've got these active preamps, and now you've got tone controls to give you the ability to boost or cut dB on those frequencies, and some of these preamps sound kind of hot. They've got louder outputs. They're active, generally speaking, an active circuit, or active bass guitar, because of the way the electronics work, it's good to have some more sustain usually, and like there's all these nuances of difference. But the thing about it is, if you were just listening to the active bass by itself and you were boosting frequencies, like it sounds amazing and huge, and it's like, oh my gosh, this sounds like an orchestra of bass. It's so alive and vibrant, and it's got so much low end and high end, and it's glorious, right? But that amazing sound on its own is not by any means necessarily going to work in a track where other instruments are also, because the footprint of bandwidth that bass tone may have is so huge that it's stepping over into the drums and it's stepping over into the guitars and keyboards. And my workaround for that back in the day, before I really kind of understood what was going on, was I was like, oh gee, let me cut these frequencies out because they're competing, and then let me bring the volume up. And it was kind of a backwards way of chasing down a good placement in a track.
Do you think that's why P basses are so prolific? Because I mean, on their own, they really aren't that great sounding. There's nothing real special about them, but in the mix, they just always work.
They do, and this is the thing about passive instruments, and this was one of the lessons learned. It was that, you know, a passive instrument, especially like a traditional, like a jazz bass, P bass, anything like that, because they have a, you know, for lack of a better description, like a narrower bandwidth, they kind of mind their own business and stand alone, and they have a way of, you know, Leo Fender obviously knew what he was doing when he started inventing these things, because the way that they play nicely with other instruments, you know, you can't really ignore that. So fast forward to me kind of figuring that stuff out, I learned that with my active instruments, instead of taking the approach of like, okay, let me get a great bass sound here, let me boost this, make this sound good, and then sort of bringing that to the table, instead, what I do is I start by cutting frequencies on these instruments. So when I'm recording, you know, like my Ibanez basses, the 5-string has kind of a hybrid passive and active setup in it, but it's fundamentally an active instrument. That and my 6-string, both of those basses, when I'm recording them, I put a little bit of a, you know, basically like a 2 to 3 dB cut on the bass knob on both of those, because they already have they've got a little bit more headroom than is even needed. And I've just learned
they're being pushed a little.
So many recording sessions over and over again, like this is where it needs to be, and this is how it's going to sit well. But my ear had to first get tuned into that.
That's super interesting for me to hear, because I like I said, I've listened to all your albums. I think the first one I got was like maybe Balance.
Mm-hmm.
I think that might have been the first one where I had gotten hip to you, and your tone was ridiculous on those. I mean, it sits perfect. Thanks. So, I mean, I guess this happened before those albums, because on those early albums of yours, dude, they sound amazing.
Man, I appreciate that. Well, I'll be completely honest with you. It was right after Balance or during Balance that I was starting to finally make sense of what was going on. And here's what started that whole tone quest for me. I had a chance to play on some compilation albums that had myself and a bunch of, you know, like a handful of other bass players. Like I, you know, play on an artist album and maybe they've got me and one or two other bass players on it. And so I'd get all excited to hear the finished product. And it was like my bass seemed buried in the mix. And then I'm listening to theirs, and I'm hearing every note. I'm just going, man, the mixing engineer really gypped me. What's the deal? I don't know what he's doing. But it makes so much sense, because if you put yourself in a mixing engineer's position, where someone who knows what they're doing, if you give them a tone to work with, if they're kind of trying to be respectful to your tone, they're going to not want to go hacking at all these different frequencies, right? You know, unless you're sitting there with them discussing it interactively, which almost never is the case when you leave a session. You know, later on, it's taken care of by somebody else. But if they're trying to maintain the integrity of your tone, well, think about it. If your bandwidth is super huge, your footprint is super huge. If it's up in the mix loud enough to where you would hear all the definition, the other frequencies, the subsonics and all the super low end, is probably now too loud, because it's been brought up to the top with that. So what's a mixing engineer going to do? They're going to bring you down. So when the volume comes down, unless they do something, go out of their way to make up for, you know, the lost definition there, you know, as the bass player is going to listen back and go, oh, I'm not loud enough in the mix. Well, you're loud enough in the mix. There's enough low end, and it's at a level that is complementary to the other instruments, but your footprint was so big that it was stepping on things and it couldn't be, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just, I'm not doing a super eloquent job of explaining all this, but that just opened my mind and my ears, because it forced me to look at what are these other bass players using for gear. A lot of them were using passive instruments, you know, and they weren't even running through a preamp or anything. And I'm trying to compare my sound to the passive instrument sound and figure, okay, what's the difference here? Why does this work? Why does this not work as well? And I got super obsessed with it and nerdy about it, and learned a lot.
Well, you've dialed it in. I guess it goes similar to what we were saying with the drummers. You know, I guess the closer you are to a ready mixed product, you know, early in the recording stages, you know, the less you have to polish it to make it something.
Absolutely. Do you have any kind of like a tone philosophy or even like influences that have kind of helped shape your ability to craft these sounds?
I don't know if I have a tone philosophy. I guess I just kind of, what sounds good to me is what I use. I model my tones after some of my idols. My Rhodes tone, for instance, is all Herbie Hancock. I mean, he's my number one guy, so I kind of try and get close to that. But yeah, I just kind of, you know, I don't think there's a formula for it. It kind of depends on what the rest of the mix is doing is going to dictate what you're going to do. So, you know, I think in terms of contrast. So if, you know, you have sharp tones and then softer tones, and, you know, having you know, if you have everything the same tone, everything gets, you know, muddled up. So to me, I kind of think in contrast, I guess would be the best answer to that. Yeah. You don't want, like you said, you don't want anything with too big of a footprint.
Yeah. One thing that's really changed a lot in terms of modern technology is how many people use software instruments now. Yeah. You know, especially from the keyboard perspective, as opposed to having a bunch of different keyboards.
Everybody's using them.
Yeah. So are most of your keyboard sounds software based now, or do you still like having hardware keyboards? Like what
I like the hardware still. You know, I play my Rhodes. I mean, 95% of the time, that's what I'm playing. I'm just a Rhodes guy. You're going to be really mad at me. I sold my B3.
Oh, no.
I know. I had to make room for the YouTube studio here.
Okay. Chris had an amazing sounding B3.
Yeah. So I may be on the hunt for another one at some point, but I kind of went with the YouTube thing, since that seems to be what's popular these days.
Well, man, but I don't mean to interrupt, but let's talk about that. So YouTube studio, tell people what you're talking about and what you have planned here, because I'm fascinated by this.
Yeah. So, well, I'm doing this for my personal, my business. So I'm a chiropractor by trade, and I do a lot of social media stuff and things like that. So I wanted to build a little studio in my house where I can kind of produce content and not have to, you know, go to my office and set everything up. So it's just kind of here when I'm ready for it. And, you know, it's nice to have it on hand, and I kind of slipped on it a little bit in 2020. I haven't done as much content as I should have. So that's kind of why you're looking in you've been here. You're looking at my studio. I'm kind of in the far end of it where I had all my amps and things like that. So I've kind of replaced a little bit of that with something that, you know, trying to be a little bit more responsible.
So what kind of content would that be? Was it like video instructional type stuff, or what? Yeah,
you know, I kind of do a few different things. We do a lot of, you know, condition specific videos, treatment videos. We do like patient testimonial videos. I've been kind of thinking about, you know, branching out and doing a few other things, you know, maybe some podcast stuff, some Q&A stuff. You know, just, you know, like, you know, I mean, it's just about kind of keeping your face out there and having a presence on social media.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do you think that social media is, I mean, do you think that, like, to have a successful business these days, no matter what it is, music, chiropractor, you know, whatever it is, do you feel like it's even possible to have a successful business and not have a consistent social media presence anymore?
I don't know. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but it sure is a lot easier if you can keep a presence out there.
Yeah.
I'm notoriously bad for it because I kind of don't do a whole lot of social media. If you go to like my personal Facebook page, I probably haven't posted on it in a year. I just kind of try and distance myself from that stuff. But
sure,
professionally, it's a way to reach the masses, and it's a easy and cheap, and so it doesn't make sense to not exploit that. So
sure,
I think that would hold true for anybody that's trying to make a buck off of anything. It's a cool tool to use. It shouldn't be the only pillar, but definitely it's a tool just like anything else. So I've kind of rededicated myself to it this year. I'm going to try and do a little bit more content and be better. So that's what you're looking at.
That's awesome, man. You've always been really just disciplined and well put together with your kind of knowing exactly how to, at least from where I'm standing, how to sort of divide your time and investment in, this or that in order to sort of maintain a forward momentum, both with your music and with your business.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Has that been innate for you, or did you have a mentor that kind of showed you that? Because man, I have no innate business chops. I completely depend on outside sources to give me suggestions.
I kind of in the same way. I kind of never really thought about it, to be honest with you. I mean, obviously the harder you work, the easier things, come to you. And my dad taught me my work ethic. He's the hardest working guy I've ever met. So I guess he taught me that, and my work ethic is still probably nothing compared to his, but, yeah, I mean, I appreciate that. That means something to hear that. Yeah, in terms of keeping that forward momentum, I think, with music, there hasn't been any forward momentum in the past year, but for me, it was a little bit by choice too. I just kind of haven't felt like, to be honest with you, I haven't had that creative urge to do any of that. So 2020 was all about, kind of my other stuff that I was doing. So
sure.
I guess it was forced momentum.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as the music stuff, like I said, I'm a amateur. I don't do it for a living. I consider it very much a hobby. So I have the luxury of just kind of doing it when I want to. And, the luxury of saying no to somebody if I don't feel like doing something, so, I like focusing on the stuff that I like to do now. So that's kind of where I am musically. So I just love it when you send me your stuff. And, I know I've got one back there of Scott's that he's probably dying to get done that I've had forever, and he probably hates me, but it'll get done.
I'm sure he's fine. Man, I'm so glad that you're doing this interview for so many reasons, but one important reason is what you kind of alluded to just then. You're in a position where you don't have to rely on your music to pay all your bills. And everybody's in different places with this type of thing. But man, this last year has been one, I said it before, I'll say it again, like I refer to this past year, 2020, as the great equalizer, when it comes to how we are trying to maintain our livelihoods in the musical world. And it's a sobering time for people like me and people like our mutual friend Scott Bernard, who we had an interview with the other day. For me and Scott, like our primary source of income, all the touring stuff with logins literally disappeared at the beginning of March. That was it. It was all over. Every booked show was gone. We still don't have anything on the calendar. The only thing that has happened is that Scott may have done one or two like acoustic trio things with Kenny that were just sort of, by special appointment for particular reason, but there's been not a single band show. And for me, I feel like it would be foolish to try to make an assumption about when things are going to come back or what it's going to look like as we start to, phase back into having live performances. And I'm not at all ashamed to kind of, tell people, I've shared this already several times. I started software developer school, an online based program. It's been now about, I think, 8 weeks I've been doing it.
I think that's awesome, man.
And
I think that's awesome.
It's my preemptive sort of stopgap that, God forbid, shows don't come back and that resource is no longer available for me to create bill paying money. I wanted to at least be working on something that I could help, help keep the lights on with if I needed to, or at the very least, if I just needed to augment what I was still able to do musically. Now, still doing, recordings remotely for people and some teaching and stuff like that. But man, the landscape has completely changed. That primary source is gone. So for you and from your perspective, I have so much respect for you and for Jason as well. Jason Palmer, drummer. He's got another business of his own. That's his main source of income. Y'all are you're a little bit more 2020 proof than I am.
So, I don't know if anybody's 2020 proof.
Well, man. You know what I'm saying in terms of music. Like in terms of the music income side of it.
Yeah, I'm super proud of you for doing what you're doing, man. I think that's awesome. I mean, it's 2021 and everybody's got a side hustle, I mean, it's, so I think that's just a smart way. Like we were talking about with social media, it's just one pillar. I mean, if one goes down, it's nice to have another one to rely on. And, that's something that really got me thinking this year too. So, I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. I mean, I think that's a smart strategy. And I guess that's something that probably the financial guys have been talking about for years, but I'm not hip enough to know that. But yeah, man, I'm proud of you for doing that, dude. I think that's awesome. I think that you will be able to overlap a little bit with your music career as well with that, because you're going to probably now have the ability to do some cool things online that maybe previously you weren't able to do. So, dude, I think that's super smart.
Yeah, it's the thing about last year is, and we say it time and time again, the great paradox is that, there's so many good things that ended up coming out of 2020. It's not all bad stuff. For me, it was finally an opportunity to finish this album. I couldn't have had as much uninterrupted time, over a series of months, if everything was kind of normal. I couldn't have worked on my upright bass playing, which is something new I started at the beginning of 2020. I couldn't have put as much time into that. That's been wonderfully challenging and enjoyable. And this coding work, I forgot how much I really liked learning, and I've been working on these new things, and that's been a real blessing. And have you had anything like that? Like, have you sort of embarked any new hobbies or any new projects or anything because of all the downtime, or have you just been so busy with your business?
The business, I kind of been consumed with the business this year, and not consumed, but really, really paying close attention to it and staying on top of it, because, I'm a firm believer when you get hit with something, you can pivot and maybe capitalize on that. So I kind of tried to do that, being a chiropractor, we don't treat, diseases and viruses and things like that. So, we were able to kind of say, hey, maybe the emergency room isn't the place to go if you've got headaches or back pain or things like that. We're open, everything's clean. We've modified everything. We've kind of had to, obviously stay on top of all that. So, there are ways of kind of pivoting and trying to move forward with that stuff. And like we talked about, I mean, I've been looking at secondary little streams of income and kind of thinking about little things too. So, like I said, nothing's take nothing for granted. We may not be able to work tomorrow. I've been lucky to be able to work through this thing, and I know a lot of people that haven't. So that's the only reason I say, I survived 2020.
Right. That's great. That's great. Yeah. What else do you like doing? Well, I know the answer to this question a little bit already, but you're kind of a man of the world, and that you appreciate some of the more enjoyable things in life, like really great food and great music and art type stuff. And you can make a pretty mean pizza.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, I got a new place for you next time you're down here. I think I told you about it.
But you've been doing your own.
I'm a jack of all trades kind of guy. Yeah, I've always been that way. I can be okay at a lot of things, but really good at very little things. So, that's kind of where I lay. I kind of like to get into little hobbies and things. Here recently, I've been from setting up a new video studio for my office. I've kind of rekindled my passion for photography. So been taking a lot of pictures lately and doing that. And,
very cool.
You actually got me into racing, which shame on you for doing that. My wallet does not thank you for that.
That's the other thing we share in common is this addiction that is the cars. I know you've recently gotten a new acquisition you've been enjoying, which I'm absolutely thrilled to hear. And we still got to get you up to Middle Tennessee so we can enjoy some back roads.
I can't wait to see your project either. I know you've got a beautiful little toy up there as well. So
which is I forgot to mention.
I'm nowhere near the driver that you are. I'm again a rank amateur, a jack of all trades. Man, I'm really enjoying learning steep learning curve in this race car driving game.
Yeah. Well, it's a blast. I'm excited you're doing it. I'm hoping to. I've been off the track for quite some time, but I'm hoping to change that this year. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, at the very least, there's those back roads still waiting for us. So we need to get out.
I'm down. Let's say a week or two, I'll be up there.
Yeah, man, for sure.
So I got some questions about your album, dude.
Oh, okay.
Can we talk about your album?
I guess, sure.
I'm not going to ask you what your favorite song is because I hate it when people ask that.
Okay.
But what's the song you're listening to the most right now off of the new album?
Well, I'm currently taking a break from it because there was the point of once it was finally out, sort of like celebrating and listening to it a lot and just kind of absorbing. And then I had to kind of take a break. Once I started listening to things, I started to notice things that I wish I would have done.
So you're in that phase. You're in that phase. Okay.
Yeah, I'm in that phase where I'm trying not to let myself go there. Where things are now hitting me like inspirationally. I'm going, why wasn't I inspired with that before?
That's the worst. It is the worst.
But I do have some songs that I'm most fond of. One is the Locust, which it holds a lot of sentimental value because it actually chronicles in a more of a poetic sense. It chronicles a lot of the struggles that my wife and I have had to go through. Everything, trials and tribulations with career, family, relational stuff, like losing family members, like all kinds of things that just sort of like, cause stress and grief. And I don't think she'd mind me saying, but we've contended for many, many years with some longstanding health issues with my wife. And so there's the song ultimately has a message of redemption, of redeeming rough times, bad times, ultimately redeeming them into things that are used for good. And as we've been fortunate to see these redemptive forces, sort of taking hold of these different things that were really tough to go through and redeeming those for us. And so it's like for us, it's like our victory song, like getting through the wilderness together. So that one is really sentimental in a lot of ways. And also too, like that song, artistically, I like how it happened. It's got a little bit more of like a story, like an epic storytelling type of thing with the dynamics, it gets really loud, it gets really quiet, it gets really loud again, type of thing. A little more like thematic. I think that's probably a better word for it. So I like that a lot. Professor is absolutely one of my favorites. that's a tune that I almost feel like was, I don't even know where some of that came from. I mean, you can hear the influences in it, but I'm especially excited about that song because of, you know, what it represents as a tribute, but also how much it honors the influences of my youth as a young musician, you know, coming up as a
Did
player.
That start out as a tribute song, or did it kind of, did you produce the song and then you're like, oh, I think this sounds like something that, how did that go?
It's the latter. Yeah, absolutely. So when that song began, it was built from riffs, like riff writing, and I was writing on for almost all of this record was written from a guitar perspective. And so I was writing guitar riffs and unison things, and the more the song came together, the more it started to sound like it could be in that sort of Rush prog type genre thing. And then when we lost Neil last year, it struck me clear as day. Yeah, this tune is supposed to be a tribute to him.
Yeah.
So that's
it. Really, it's the perfect tribute. I mean,
thanks, man.
It has that Rush vibe, and that's definitely, we're 2 for 2. Those are both bangers.
Thanks, man. And then if I had like a top 3, the third, it's tough to say, man. It would probably be between, Zombies and World is Loud. Either one.
Those are my other 2.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Yeah. Those are my other. I mean, the whole album's a masterwork, but there are a couple that really stick out. Those are my kind of favorites, I suppose. At least right now. You know how it goes. It changes. You might find a couple other ones that are going to be your favorites in a month or two. But
those are.
It's fantastic, man.
Thank you so much, man. Thank you, and thanks for being a part of it too. So appreciate it.
Thank you for asking me. I get a little like a little tickled every time you call me to do a song because it's like I'm just a guy from Mississippi that just like listening to your music. So I'm super tickled to be playing on it and to call you a buddy too.
Man, absolutely. I appreciate that. It's there's obviously something in the water there. I mean, what is Tupelo?
It's a hotbed. It's a hotbed for good musicians.
It is. Is there a historical context that that I'm not aware of that ties
I don't know.
music and Tupelo together?
I mean, birthplace of Elvis.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Duh.
The crossroads is not far away.
Yeah.
So there's that whole Mississippi blues. It's kind of in our DNA.
Yeah.
But I mean, really, in these little small towns, Mississippi, when you're growing up, it's either you're going to play sports or you're going to play music. And I'm not a super athletic guy, so I went the music route. My family was musical, so I think a lot of folks kind of wind up going that route, and there are just a lot of great musicians here.
That is the truth. That's amazing. We've had some great gigs
got some great gigs in Tupelo.
There's some not only great musicians, but there's really appreciative music listeners and music connoisseurs, if you want to call it that. I mean, people seem to really, they like coming out and supporting, and that's so great. Got to give props to the Blue Canoe where.
Yeah, Adam Morgan. He's been instrumental in kind of creating that vibe in Tupelo. He's really built his. For those that don't know, the Blue Canoe is a very nice listening room and / restaurant and bar here in Tupelo, and a good buddy of ours, Adam Morgan, owns it. And he's really developed sort of that vibe in Tupelo altogether. He really, when you go into his place, you go to listen to good music. And as a musician, I think it's one of my favorite places I've ever played. I mean, it's just so much fun to be able to sit down and. I mean, it's just a little hole in the wall joint, but it's nice, and it's the audience is very appreciative and very interactive, and that goes a long way when you're on stage.
And the stage sounds great
we're blessed
too.
to have that vibe here.
Yeah, and it's got a great sounding stage. It's small, but it's intimate, and heck, even the food's good, which is a nice bonus.
And we've got recordings on YouTube.
That's right.
From there. So if anybody's watching this, you want to check it out, go look up.
And I'll add some I'll add some links in the video description for that, and people can check those out as well. Anything else you want to share with anybody, or anything that you have coming up?
Man, just that I'm super proud of you, brother.
Oh man,
I'm super proud of you, brother, for this thing. This is, like I said, it's a masterwork. I no joke, I've been listening to it nonstop for the past. When did you send me like the pre-release MP3s? 2 or 3 months ago.
It's been a while.
I've been listening to it nonstop. Honestly, I haven't. I love prog. I big Rush fan. I love that stuff, but my ears fatigue of it sometimes. Usually by the time you get halfway through an album, you're kind of like, okay, my ears might be a little blown out now. It's time to move on to something else. Not with this. Wow. Not with this. It's sonically very polished, and I can't say enough good things about it, man. I really like this album.
Thank you so much, man. That means the world to me. I appreciate that a lot. Man, Chris, thank you so much for your
Thank you, my brother.
And for doing this. And I can't wait to hang with you again in person and play some music. And
let's do it.
Yeah, we will. We'll keep fighting the good fight and get out of this mess, hopefully before too long. And whatever, man, just keep doing what we were doing before. And I'm more than anything else, man, I really do remain hopeful about things turning back around, and all of us having an opportunity to share our passions, through our.
It will. It may look a little different, but it will. It has to.
Absolutely. Well, man, blessings to you, and also to your family. Tell your mom and dad to say hello.
I will, man. Give Steph a big hug for me.
Yeah, will do. You have a great night, man. Thanks again.
You too, brother.
All right. Oh, hey, are you still there?
Yeah.
I forgot. Sorry. I'll edit this in more smoothly.
All right.
Okay. So Chris, if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to get you to play on their music, or get you to produce something they're doing, anything like that, is that okay? And if so, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you so they can take advantage of your time?
Yeah, so hit me on Facebook, Chris Carver on Facebook, Carver Music on YouTube. I'm not that hard to find, and just give me a shout, and we'll see what we can work out.
Awesome, man. Fantastic. All right, everybody. Yeah. Make sure you reach out, take advantage, and we will see you in the next installment. Everybody, God bless. Take care.
See you, brother.